Ever mess around with dowsing?
Hmm.
You know those rods that twitch around,
Yeah.
supposedly pointing out hidden water?
Right.
It feels straight out of a magic show, doesn't it?
It really does.
But what if it's tapping into something real?
Yeah.
Something science hasn't fully explained yet,
Makes you wonder if there's more to the world than meets the eye, right?
right?
Like, what if we could actually measure those subtle energies,
Yeah.
those fields of information that some people claim to sense?
That's exactly what we're diving into today.
Okay.
Radionics. A field that claims to do just that,
Right.
using vibrations and energy fields.
Interesting.
We've got excerpts from an interview with Dr. Don Paris, creator of the SE5,
Okay.
a device he claims can tap into those unseen energies.
Right.
So listener, get ready to explore the intersection of ancient practices
Yeah.
and cutting-edge technology.
What's interesting about the SE5 is how it takes the concept of dowsing, something often associated with folklore and intuition, and attempts to bring a level of, well, precision to it.
It's like taking dowsing from, I feel something over here, to this graph shows a spike at precisely this frequency.
Yeah, exactly.
But how does it actually work? I mean,
Right.
does the SE5 have a tiny divining rod built into it or something?
Well, Dr. Paris talks about a rub plate
Okay.
that's central to the device.
Oh, yeah.
Supposed to rub your fingers on it while focusing on a particular question.
Hmm.
And the SE5 supposedly picks up on subtle changes in your body's energy field.
Okay, I can kind of see that. Maybe our bodies are electrical systems, right?
Right.
But then he takes it a step further with this precision stick detector thing, right?
Yes.
What is that all about?
So the detector's designed to measure even the tiniest muscle movements. As you're using the rub plate,
Okay.
the idea is to quantify those subtle dowsing responses
Hmm.
and display them on a graph.
Hmm.
It's like trying to measure intuition, which is a pretty wild concept when you
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah. So it's not just about detecting these energy fields, though.
Right.
Dr. Paris is saying the SE5 can actually influence them, too.
Yeah.
He uses the phrase sending information, which sounds incredibly futuristic.
Right, and that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
But also where the skepticism kicks in.
Yeah.
He's suggesting that this influence doesn't rely on any known scientific principles.
Uh-huh.
We're talking instantaneous action across any distance, which obviously has some pretty mind-blowing implications if true.
Yeah, it's like claiming you can send a text message without cell service, Wi-Fi, or even satellites.
Right.
Okay, so let's get into some of the experiments Dr. Paris describes.
Okay.
He talks about using the SE5 on seeds, and the results he claims are pretty remarkable.
Yeah, this is one of those stories that really captures the imagination, isn't it?
Yeah.
He took two groups of seeds. One he labeled balanced using the SE5.
Uh-huh.
The other remained untreated as a control group. Then he grew both sets of seeds under identical conditions. Same soil, same sunlight, same everything.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
The pictures from this experiment are pretty startling. The balanced seeds grew significantly larger.
Interesting.
And we're not talking about a small difference here. We're talking about massive,
Wow.
noticeable differences in size.
The visuals are definitely compelling.
Yeah.
And it gets even more intriguing when you consider that this wasn't just a one-time experiment.
Right.
Dr. Paris talks about an entire research project conducted by an institute in Germany
Really?
where they used the SE5 on forests damaged by acid rain.
Wait, hold on. They use this device on entire forests.
Yeah,
That's a massive jump from a few seeds in a lab.
it is.
What happened? Did these forests suddenly become superpowered?
Well, according to Dr. Paris, those treated forests thrived. He claims they showed significantly more growth, even during a drought that negatively impacted the untreated areas. They even went a step further and used a light meter to measure the leaf density, attempting to get some objective data on the health of those trees.
Okay, so we've got giant seeds and thriving forests.
Uh-huh.
That's all pretty impressive. But I have to admit, I'm most curious about the potential applications for personal health.
Right.
Dr. Paris talks about using the SE5 to test the effectiveness of vitamins and supplements. And that's something I think we can all relate to, right?
Yeah, sure. It's definitely an area where people are looking for answers. And Dr. Paris claims the SE5 can provide those answers by tapping into what he calls resonance.
Okay.
He suggests that everything, from our organs to even individual vitamins, has a unique energetic signature.
So it's like each vitamin has its own ID card, and the
Yeah.
SE5 is the bouncer checking to see if it's allowed into the club. That's my body.
That's a fun way to put it.
Uh-huh.
And according to Dr. Paris, the SE5 can read those energetic IDs and determine whether a particular substance will resonate positively or negatively with your system.
Okay, but how does he even measure that? Does he, like, tape a vitamin bottle to the device and hope for the best?
Actually, it's even more interesting than that.
Yeah.
He uses photographs.
What?
He'll place a photograph of the person on the device. Let's say it's you. And he claims that establishes a kind of energetic link, what he calls a resonating field, connected to you. Then he can introduce different substances, a vitamin, a supplement, whatever it might be, and see how it interacts with your field.
So it's kind of like those old school compatibility tests in magazines, but instead of he loves you not, it's this vitamin boosts your energy, this one drains you.
Exactly. And he gives a specific example in the interview that I found fascinating.
Okay.
He talks about testing chlorella, a type of algae that's often touted as a superfood.
Right.
You'd think it would have a positive effect, right?
Yeah.
But according to the SE5, it actually had a negative impact on the person's overall vitality reading.
Wow, that's a surprise. What about something more common, like magnesium?
Now, magnesium, on the other hand, showed a very positive effect in his tests.
Okay.
And here's where it gets really interesting. He claims the SE5 can go beyond just assessing overall vitality. He suggests it can actually pinpoint the effects of substances on specific bodily systems.
So it's not just telling you if something is good or bad for you in general.
Right.
It's giving you a detailed breakdown of how it impacts, say, your heart or your lungs.
That's the claim.
Yeah.
He talks about being able to tune into the informational field of a person's skeletal system, for example, to see how a supplement might be affecting their bone density.
Right.
It's like having a blueprint of your body
Yeah.
and seeing how different elements impact the design itself, rather than just the physical structure.
Okay, that blueprint analogy is actually really helpful. It's like
Mhm.
each of us has this energetic blueprint that guides our physical form, similar to how DNA determines our genetic makeup, right?
Precisely. Dr. Paris called them intrinsic data field. These blueprints that he believes guide the formation and function of everything in the universe, from the smallest cell to the largest galaxy.
Wow.
And the idea is that the SE5 interacts with these blueprints, these organizing principles, not the physical matter itself.
So if we're talking about interacting with these information fields, does that mean we can imprint them onto other things? Like, could you bottle up the essence of a perfectly balanced diet and use it to, I don't know, cure world hunger?
Well, Dr. Paris does talk about the idea of programming water with the SE5,
Really?
which is an idea that's as intriguing as it is controversial.
Hold on. Programming water?
Yeah.
Like giving it instructions like it's a computer?
Exactly.
How does that even work?
He gives the example of digitizing the properties of Chinese herbs. They were able to essentially capture the energetic signature of these herbs and then transfer that information into water. They call it programmed water.
Okay, let's say hypothetically, I'm on board with this whole programming water idea. Okay.
What do they do with it? Do you water your plants with it? Add it to your bath? What's the deal?
It's even more intriguing than that.
Okay.
Dr. Paris claims this programmed water, imprinted with the information of these herbs, was used in studies involving a staggering number of people, over 30,000.
Wait, 30,000 people?
Yeah,
That's huge. That's like a small city.
I know.
All drinking programmed water. What were the results?
He claims they saw an 80 to 85% success rate in treating various ailments.
85%.
Yeah.
Listener, imagine if a new drug came out with that kind of success rate.
Right.
But how are they even administering this water? Are we talking IV drips, special baths, tiny spoons? What's the delivery method here?
You might be surprised to hear it was even simpler than that,
Okay.
according to Dr. Paris. They just sprayed it on themselves.
Hold on. They're spraying themselves with herb-infused water and claiming it's curing diseases at an 85% success rate.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm really starting to question things.
It's definitely a claim that requires a healthy dose of skepticism.
But even if we set aside the question of whether or not it's actually true, the implications are still pretty mind-blowing.
I mean, imagine if we could bottle up the essence of anything. Health energy, even something like creativity, and transfer it to ourselves just by spritzing ourselves with some fancy water.
Yeah.
It sounds like something out of a science fiction novel.
It does, doesn't it? And these applications go beyond just personal health.
Okay.
Dr. Paris also talks about using this programmed water in agriculture,
Really?
which is a whole other can of worms.
Okay, now I have to hear this.
Okay.
What are they doing? watering crops with ginseng-infused water to make them grow faster.
Not ginseng,
Ugh.
but you're on the right track.
Okay.
He mentions a product called inertia that's being used on crops like wheat and corn.
And what does this inertia do?
Mm.
Is it like supercharged water that makes crops immune to pests and droughts?
It's basically programmed water, just like we were talking about.
Okay.
But instead of herbs, it's imprinted with the information of, say, fertilizer.
Wait, so they're spraying information. That's supposed to act like actual fertilizer.
Exactly.
Wow.
And the claim is that the plants respond as if they're receiving the actual nutrients, even though it's just, information.
Okay, now my head is officially spinning.
No.
Giant seeds, thriving forests, herb-infused water, crops growing on information. This is a lot to process.
It is.
Listener, are you still with us? Because I'm not even sure I believe what I'm hearing at this point. I mean, I love a good science fiction movie as much as the next person.
Yeah.
But this is pushing the boundaries of what I thought was possible.
It's definitely a lot to digest. And I think it's important to acknowledge that radionics and this whole idea of informational fields sits outside the realm of what's currently accepted by the scientific community.
So where does that leave us? Are we saying Dr. Paris is just making all this up?
I wouldn't go that far. It's more accurate to say that the mechanisms he's proposing, how these devices supposedly work, how information can influence physical matter in this way, haven't been demonstrated or validated through the rigorous testing that science requires.
So there's no concrete proof yet, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's impossible, right? I mean, look at how much our understanding of physics has changed over the past century.
Yeah.
Things that seemed like science fiction back then are commonplace today.
That's true. Think about the early pioneers of electricity or radio waves.
Right.
They were often ridiculed for their ideas because they were trying to understand forces that were completely invisible and unexplainable at the time.
It's like that old saying, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Right.
Maybe radionics is just technology that's a little too advanced for us to fully grasp right now.
And that's what makes it such a fascinating topic to explore. Whether or not these specific claims about the SE5 hold up under scrutiny, they do raise some really interesting questions about the nature of reality itself.
Exactly. What if there are forces at work here that we simply haven't figured out how to measure or understand yet?
Right.
What if our current scientific instruments are just too crude to even detect these subtle energies, let alone understand how they might be manipulated?
It's a humbling thought, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
To consider that we might only be scratching the surface of what's truly possible.
So listener, as we wrap up our deep dive into radionics and the SE5, we're left with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the point. Maybe the real value in exploring these fringe ideas lies not in proving them right or wrong, but in opening our minds to possibilities we hadn't considered before.
And who knows, maybe someday, with enough curiosity and open-minded investigation, we might just unlock the secrets of these unseen forces and discover a whole new world of potential right beneath the surface of our everyday reality.
Now that's a thought-provoking note to end on. We'll leave you with that, listener. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of radionics.